This is channel Xianxia Audio. Please support me a subscription. This is the series I'm Not a Theater God. Chapter 101. The Egg. Han Shuang Street. Zhao Yi, soaked in mist, pushed open his front door, leaned the large flag bearing the words, "Resumption of work," against the wall, and sat down exhausted. "You're back?" Uncle Zhao, wearing an apron, stood by the table, kneading dough while looking at him, asking with some concern, "How was it? What did the factory say?" "No resumption of work, they just gave out a bit of money." Zhao Yi gulped down some water, slapped the coins from his pocket onto the table, and grumbled. "No resumption of work, what's the point of just getting this money? How many days will it last?" "No, I have to go again tomorrow. As long as they don't resume work, I'll cause trouble every day." Uncle Zhao looked at him for a long time, then sighed deeply. "Xiao Yi, if the factory is truly determined to stop work, what's the use of you causing trouble? If you anger them, be careful not to suffer the consequences." "If I anger him, does he dare touch me?" Zhao Yi's eyes widened. "If he dares touch me, I'll fight him to the death." "Fight, fight, fight, what do you have to fight them with?" Uncle Zhao snorted coldly, slamming a large piece of dough onto the wooden board with a thud. "Every day, you don't do anything proper. You just know how to stick your neck out and glare at others. What's the use? When you finally learn to humble yourself, your old man won't have to worry so much. Do you think this world is so easy to get by in?" Zhao Yi clearly felt Uncle Zhao's anger. He had wanted to argue, but ultimately, he pursed his lips and remained silent. The room suddenly fell silent. The two stood in a stalemate for a long time. Then Uncle Zhao shook his head and continued kneading the dough. "If you can't go to the steel factory, then so be it. Our family at least still has this breakfast stall. Even though your old man can't earn much money, feeding you, kid, is still no problem." Upon hearing this, Zhao Yi's expression changed, and his fists beneath the table clenched tightly. After a long while, he stood up without a word and walked into the room. "Where are you going?" Uncle Zhao asked. "To sleep." "Why are you yelling at your old man?" Bang! As the door closed, Uncle Zhao cursed under his breath, calling him a little brat, then buried his head and continued kneading the dough with even more force. Mist surged, and the sky outside gradually darkened. Uncle Zhao wiped the sweat from his brow, walked to the table, and lit the kerosene lamp. The orange lamplight illuminated a corner of the breakfast stall, casting his slightly stooped shadow onto the mottled wall. Outside the door, a figure in a black trench coat stopped in the mist. "Uncle Zhao, still busy?" Chen Ling saw the breakfast stall's light still on and opened the door a crack to ask. "Ei Ling, quick, come in and sit." Uncle Zhao's face brightened with a smile when he saw Chen Ling. "The cook at the primary school down the street ran off, and there's no one to make breakfast. So they placed a big order with me. I'm quite busy." "No, I still have to patrol." "Patrolling so late?" Uncle Zhao was startled. "Did something happen?" Chen Ling hesitated for a moment. "No, but anyway, it's best not to go out recently. It might not be very safe outside." Okay, Uncle Zhao nodded repeatedly. "Get some rest, Uncle Zhao, don't stay up too late." "All right." Uncle Zhao's smile grew even wider. He seemed to have thought of something. Sighing helplessly, "If only our boy were half as sensible as you, I'd be content." Chen Ling smiled, closed the shop door for him, and carrying a kerosene lamp, gradually disappeared into the night mist. The night passed without a word. Ellipsis. Early the next morning, the door slowly opened, and Zhao Yi emerged from the room with red eyes, as if he hadn't slept well. He opened his mouth to say something, but his peripheral vision caught sight of the figure in the shop, and he silently closed his mouth. At some point, Uncle Zhao had fallen asleep at the table, light snores echoing in the room, and outside the glass door, the mist hung thick. On the table in front of him, hundreds of packed steamed buns were neatly arranged, filling 6 large bags, the result of his entire night's labor. Zhao Yi frowned as he looked at the buns, then at the sleeping figure at the table. His black hair could no longer conceal the silvery strands of age, like a dusting of snow, and his brows were etched with exhaustion. At his age, he still insists on pushing himself. Zhao Yi mumbled, his eyes filled with complex emotions. His gaze swept across the slightly cramped and old breakfast stall, finally resting on the flag leaning in the corner. and the complexity in his eyes gradually turned into determination. He took a deep breath, tiptoed into the room to fetch a cotton coat to cover Uncle Zhao. Then walked to the door, hoisted the large flag onto his shoulder, pushed open the shop door, and strode into the dense fog. The resumption of work flag swayed in the mist, and the young man's defiant face was unyielding. He walked alone through the silent street, heading north, until the district and the bustling crowds faded behind him. After a long trek, the colossal structure sprawling in the mist gradually appeared before his eyes. He stopped at the gate of the steel factory. Perhaps due to the heavy fog, perhaps because it was too early, or perhaps because the meager wages from yesterday had appeased everyone else. He was the only one at the steel factory gate now. He forcefully plunged the flagpole into the muddy ground beneath his feet, gathered all his strength, and shouted towards the factory buildings shrouded in mist. "Where is everyone? Come out now. We want to resume work." "I said yesterday, as long as you don't resume work, I'll come and cause trouble every day. If you don't resume work, no one will have an easy time. Everyone, come out. I want to resume work." Zhao Yi's shouts echoed in the mist, unheeded, unanswered, but he continued to shout tirelessly, as if his throat were made of iron. Zhao Yi was not foolish. He knew the problem didn't lie with this factory but within Aurora City. But what could he do? As a young man from the 3rd district of Xianxia Street, he couldn't possibly reach Aurora City. For him, shouting here was his only way to defy fate. Zhao Yi's continuous shouts were suddenly interrupted by a harsh screech as the unmanned iron gate slowly opened outwards. Screech. Zhao Yi froze. Perhaps it was the wind. Or perhaps the gate was simply unlocked. Zhao Yi didn't think much of it. He gritted his teeth, pulled up the flag, hoisted it onto his shoulder, and with a swift step, passed through the gate, heading directly towards the workshop. "Meng Shi, come out." Zhao Yi kicked open the workshop door, about to confront Meng Shi directly, but then he froze in place. Inside the several-story-high workshop, a massive shadow loomed over several mountain-like machines, resembling a giant centipede, and directly beneath this centipede, within its shadow, one could see objects resembling insect eggs, trembling slightly. Chapter 102. They are here. Han Yu Street is clear. Han Feng Street is clear. Han Shui Street is clear. Voices came one after another from the walkie-talkie. Chen Ling stood alone on the roof of a 5-story building, looking around. This small building was already the tallest in the nearby streets. If he stood here on a normal day, Chen Ling could see 5 or 6 streets clearly. But now, in the thick fog, he couldn't even see the edge of this floor, as if the whole world was enveloped in mist. He sighed helplessly and pressed the walkie-talkie. Han Shuang Street is clear. It was already the 2nd evening since the dense fog descended. There were no signs of disaster invading, and there was no reply from Aurora City. Everything was so quiet, unsettlingly quiet. Especially Chen Ling. Ever since he saw the prompt for the audience's expectation value, he was certain that something had happened in the 3rd district. But he searched all the streets last night and found nothing unusual. "The 3rd post enforcer will take over, the rest can rest." Han Meng's voice came from the walkie-talkie, followed by a series of acknowledgements. As dusk fell, Chen Ling put away the walkie-talkie and returned to the 1st floor via the stairs, heading straight home. Stimulated by the audience's expectation value last night, he hadn't slept a wink, so he needed to rest today. He arrived at his doorstep and saw that Zhao Yi's breakfast shop opposite was still brightly lit. After a moment of hesitation, he decided not to disturb him and turned to go back inside. Chen Ling washed up and went to bed early, his consciousness gradually sinking into sleep. Of course, dreaming was impossible. Chen Ling opened his eyes again. Pairs of mocking red eyes were watching him from the audience, and blinding spotlights shone on him, making him the sole focus on the dilapidated stage. Chen Ling was used to this, but he vaguely felt that the audience's gaze seemed even stranger today. It was as if they were anticipating something. Chen Ling frowned slightly and looked down at the screen on the stage. After a day of boring guard duty, the audience's expectation value had not dropped. It still maintained the 39% progress from last night. This was almost impossible for the audience. Something's not right. Chen Ling keenly sensed something amiss. There must be a problem somewhere. Chen Ling carefully recalled everything in his mind but found no issues. This was not surprising, because Chen Ling knew that the audience could see some plots that he couldn't. Trying to deduce the problem this way required luck. Chen Ling pondered for a long time and could only give up. He closed his eyes, and in a trance, the twisted divine path leading to the firmament reappeared around him. Ever since Chen Ling unlocked the qualification to step onto the second step, he would try to ascend almost every night. After all, he could feel his mental power growing every day. Although it was only a very slight increase, it was an increase nonetheless. Chen Ling took a deep breath and continuously poured mental power into his feet. Just as his foot gradually approached the surface of the step, a crisp bell suddenly rang from above the stage. Ding-a-ling. Chen Ling was stunned. He was, of course, familiar with this bell sound. It meant the intermission was over. For him, it meant his dream was about to end. But he had only just fallen asleep, hadn't he? Chen Ling looked at the screen in front of the stage in confusion. A line of characters had already popped up. Open black lens bracket, intermission over. Please continue the performance, close black lens bracket. Immediately following were a series of characters. Open black lens bracket, audience expectation value +3, close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket, audience expectation value +3, close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket, audience expectation value plus, close black lens bracket. Chen Ling's consciousness plummeted. Ellipsis. Thump thump thump. In his dream, Chen Ling suddenly opened his eyes. Someone was knocking on the door? Misty fog flowed outside the dark window. He quickly sat up and looked towards the direction of the door. Thump thump thump. The knocking sound rang again. Not too loud, not too soft, with each knock perfectly even, giving a sense of elegance without losing politeness. Chen Ling checked the time. Less than an hour had passed since he fell asleep. No wonder the stage was urging him to continue the performance. It turned out someone was knocking. No, that's not right. Chen Ling clearly remembered that before he lost consciousness on the stage. He saw the screen frantically displaying increasing audience expectation value alerts. Something that could excite the audience so much surely wasn't as simple as just knocking on the door. Chen Ling got out of bed without hesitation, gripped the gun by his bedside, and slowly approached the door. Thump thump thump. Who is it? Chen Ling asked in a deep voice. A moment later, a harsh and eerie voice came from outside the door. I'm here, looking for someone. Upon hearing this voice, Chen Ling knew something was wrong. This was not a sound that a human vocal cord could produce. It was as grating as fingernails scratching a blackboard, except this grating sound was mimicking human speech. Looking for someone? Chen Ling subconsciously asked. Who are you looking for? The Scarlet Monarch of the Ghostly Abyss. The King of Facelessness who mocks fate. These two sentences had no pause or awkwardness, sounding very fluent and natural, as if they had been practiced many times. Chen Ling's mind raced, contemplating whether to open the door to see what was behind it or to just shoot. After a moment of silence, he replied, "The person you are looking for is not here." The voice behind the door fell silent. The next moment, Chen Ling's front door exploded. Amidst the hazy fog, a figure lunged at Chen Ling's face. Chen Ling was prepared. He instantly raised his knee, striking the figure's chest, and swung the gun butt, smashing it against the opponent's head. The figure grunted and fell heavily to the ground. Only then could Chen Ling barely make out his full appearance. Zhao Yi? Seeing the person's face, Chen Ling was stunned. Be careful, my shadow. Zhao Yi's face was pale, and he endured the dizziness in his head to shout. Chen Ling's pupils contracted slightly. Almost simultaneously, a huge afterimage swept from the shadows to his front. It was too fast. Chen Ling didn't have time to think. He immediately unleashed his strongest killing move. The Court of Judgment's domain suddenly expanded, and the black gun barrel instantly aimed forward. He pulled the trigger without hesitation. Bang! The deconstructing bullet pierced through the black shadow, tearing it directly into nothingness, turning into a pile of shattered sludge that fell to the ground. The mental exhaustion from the Court of Judgment made Chen Ling feel a bit dizzy. But it was much better than the time in the Bingdao ancient treasury. He frowned, looking at the shapeless corpse on the ground, then at Zhao Yi, who was on the ground, coughing violently. Zhao Yi, what's going on? Zhao Yi lay on his back, gasping like a broken bellows, his voice extremely weak. Chen Ling, they're here. Chapter 103. Chicken. Who are they? There are so many monsters in the factory. Zhao Yi seemed to recall something, and terror surfaced in his eyes. I originally wanted to cause trouble at the factory, but seeing the iron gate wasn't closed, I walked in, then I saw a large centipede lying on top of a machine. About dozens of meters long. It was all black, like a shadow. Upon hearing this, Chen Ling's heart sank. No wonder he had patrolled the entire district and found nothing unusual. It turned out that thing was hidden in the factory. He had only just returned from there yesterday, so he subconsciously didn't look there. It seems that thing must have appeared after he left. And then? I was scared. Zhao Yi swallowed. My mind went blank at the time. And I turned and ran. Then a bunch of little centipedes hatched from egg-like things came out to chase me. I didn't dare to look back, so I could only run for my life. At that time, the first person I thought of was you. So I ran towards you. But as I got closer to the district, I felt my body getting heavier and my mind becoming less clear. I looked back and found my shadow had turned into a centipede. And then, I can't remember. Chen Ling looked at the broken black corpse on the ground, his expression somewhat grave. Centipedes that can control human bodies through shadows. And according to Zhao Yi's description, there seems to be quite a number of these things. The large centipede in the factory must have been incubating in the workshop for at least a day. Chen Ling picked up the walkie-talkie without hesitation and pressed the button. This is Chen Ling. A major disaster has been found at the steel factory, and it is incubating a large number of offspring, suspected to have already started attacking the district. As soon as this sentence was uttered, the intercom channel fell into a dead silence. After a brief second, Han Meng's calm voice rang out. Received. No questioning, no further inquiries, no surprise or panic. After Han Meng's words fell, a loud bell rang throughout the third district. Dong, dong, dong. The disaster bell rang. Ellipsis. The bell woke countless people from their sleep. 3 disaster bells? A middle-aged woman sat up in bed, her face pale with fright. Is there another disaster in our third district? Keep your voice down. Boss Shu clapped his hand over her mouth, looking vigilantly out the window. The dim sky combined with the swirling fog made it impossible to see anything. As if invisible hands had isolated all the houses. The woman's eyes widened, her gaze towards the window filled with fear. The dark sky, the deep thick fog, the lingering bell tolls, these unknowns stirred the fear of the people hiding in their homes. They knew something was in that fog, but they didn't know if or when it would appear. Seeming to feel the woman trembling, Boss Shu lowered his voice and comforted her. It's all right, what's there to be afraid of? Last time the disaster bell rang, weren't we fine? Just stay put at home, and nothing will happen. Seeing the woman still afraid, Boss Shu hesitated for a moment, then added. Besides, that demon, enforcement officer Chen Ling, isn't he living on Hanshuang Street? If it really comes to a fight, which disaster could be fiercer than him? The woman blinked, seemingly agreeing with Boss Shu. In this situation, knowing that an enforcement officer was not far away undoubtedly gave a great sense of security. Although sometimes, this enforcement officer was the source of their fear. Thump thump thump. A sudden knocking sound came from the door. This knocking instantly tensed their nerves. They abruptly looked towards the door, holding their breath simultaneously. So late at night, with thick fog, and the disaster bell having just rung, who would come knocking on their door? In this situation, they certainly wouldn't open their mouths to ask. Like children left alone at home when their parents are out, they wouldn't be foolish enough to get up and open the door to see who was knocking. They just stared intently at that door, the room filled with a deathly silence. Thump thump thump. The knocking sounded again, exactly the same rhythm as before. Unhurried, elegant, and patient. The woman swallowed, her heart almost leaping out of her chest. She naturally realized something was wrong and looked at Boss Shu beside her in terror. Boss Shu gritted his teeth. When the knocking sounded for the third time, he cautiously got out of bed, retrieved a kitchen knife from the kitchen, and stared intently at the back of the door. If whatever was behind the door dared to break in, he would at least have a weapon to fight back. Bang! A shattering sound came from outside the door, startling Boss Shu so much that the kitchen knife in his hand almost fell to the ground. That wasn't his door. By the sound, it seemed to come from next door, as if the front door had been violently smashed open by something. followed by a series of terrified screams. Boss Shu recognized it. Those were the screams of his neighbor Old Li's family. Through the wall, he could even clearly hear bodies being slammed to the ground and the sound of flesh being torn. Children were wailing, women were screaming. Moments later, terrified cries echoed from the house across the way, and then from the street further away, in this thick fog where one couldn't see their hand in front of their face. A chaotic and bloody riot had already begun. Boss Shu's hand, gripping the kitchen knife, trembled uncontrollably. Just then, a calm voice echoed from the street. "Everyone, remain silent." Hearing this voice, Boss Shu froze, then abruptly looked in one direction through the window. In the hazy gray fog, a figure in a black trench coat slowly walked closer. He raised his gun and pulled the trigger towards the sky, a buzzing sound reverberating through Xianxia Street. The next moment, Boss Shu heard the tearing sounds from next door abruptly cease, as if the monster's attention had been drawn away, leaving only the woman's suppressed sobs faintly audible from the corner of the wall. "Aren't you looking for someone?" Chen Ling stood in the fog, slowly speaking. "Why don't you come and ask me?" As soon as this sentence was uttered, a black shadow immediately passed by Boss Shu's window, as if it had just emerged from next door. It was then that he finally saw the full appearance of the thing. It was an upright walking centipede, pitch black all over, like a shadow. It stood about 2 meters tall, with countless slender legs rotating on either side of its body. A dark red hole at its mouth continuously contracted. Although it only passed by for an instant, it utterly terrified Boss Shu. He collapsed onto the ground, his lips trembling uncontrollably. What kind of monster was that? The same question also appeared in the minds of all the residents on Xianxia Street. They hid behind dark windows, holding their breath, nervously watching the several centipede monsters approaching the center of the street. In the center of their encirclement, the black trench coat stood tall and straight. Chen Ling held a gun in one hand and a dagger in the other, slowly scanning his surroundings. As those monsters gradually approached in the thick fog, Chen Ling finally saw their appearance clearly. Chen Ling was stunned. He rubbed his eyes and stared intently at these black shadows. His expression was a bit strange. "These things, they look quite delicious?" Chen Ling muttered to himself. In his vision, one featherless, tender-textured chicken after another was slowly walking towards him, like perfect ingredients ready for the pot. Just one look made one's mouth water. Chapter 104 Battle in the Fog. Chen Ling couldn't help but swallow. The afterimage that darted out from Zhao Yi's shadow just now was so fast that Chen Ling didn't even see what it was before he blasted it into smithereens with a single shot. Now, upon closer inspection of these monsters, he felt a strange sense of festivity. It was as if fragrant Thanksgiving chickens had walked off the dinner table themselves, hopping and skipping towards him. Except these chickens were all over 2 meters tall. Are the disasters crawling out of the gray realm all this fragrant? Open black lens bracket audience anticipation +8 close black lens bracket. Chen Ling reconsidered, feeling something was amiss. Zhao Yi had described the monster in the factory as a centipede. So why did it turn into chickens after hatching from the eggs? But now was not the time to ponder this. Those sturdy chickens were approaching him, and Chen Ling could feel a faint sense of pressure from them. These chickens were at least first tier. 1, 2, 3, 6, 7, 8 of them? If nothing unexpected happened, all the disasters in the entire Xianxia Street had been attracted to him. Chen Ling's eyes narrowed slightly. This monster is so disgusting? The middle-aged woman quietly crept to the windowsill, her face growing paler as she saw the scene in the middle of the street. Can Chen Ling win? Boss Shu's expression was also a bit grim. After all, Chen Ling had only just been promoted to enforcement officer. Facing so many monsters at once, he looked like the weaker party. But for some reason, Boss Shu just felt that Chen Ling was even more troublesome than these monsters. The same worry appeared in the hearts of other Xianxia Street residents. They peered through their windows, nervously watching the battle in the fog, their hearts almost leaping out of their chests. Under everyone's gaze, Chen Ling, clad in a black trench coat, moved. He slowly raised his dagger and plunged it into his own abdomen. Everyone. Open black lens bracket audience anticipation +5 close black lens bracket. After one stab, Chen Ling still felt it wasn't enough. He then stabbed himself again in his lower abdomen and between his ribs. The blade of the dagger turned completely red. The battle hadn't even begun. Yet he was already in an injured state. Crimson blood gushed from the wounds, soaking the clothes beneath his trench coat. Chen Ling's lips curved into a slight smile. These 3 stabs did not bring him any pain. Instead, there was a strange tingling sensation. He could feel an endless surge of power erupting from within him. And his 5 senses were several times sharper than usual. At this moment, the 8 figures rushing towards him seemed to slow down. Is this the blood clothes? Chen Ling's self-mutilating actions and eerie smile left the residents of Han Shuang Street utterly blank-minded. They had never seen anyone stab themselves before a fight. Those 3 stabs went deeper and deeper. If it were an ordinary person, they would probably be pale with pain. But Chen Ling not only showed no pain but even revealed a sense of pleasure. This scene seemed utterly bizarre at first glance. But occurring on Chen Ling, it seemed quite reasonable. After all, he was a being who ate human hearts raw. Was this some evil ritual before battle? Or was he sacrificing to some evil entity? Everyone suddenly felt that, compared to Chen Ling at this moment, those frightening shadow centipedes didn't seem so terrifying anymore. The 8 shadow centipedes suddenly stirred the thick fog, rushing towards the blood-soaked Chen Ling with astonishing speed. Everyone only felt a blur before their eyes as the bloody figure suddenly crashed out, kicking the leading centipede into the thick fog. Chen Ling's speed was incredibly fast, like a high-speed train. The moment he kicked the shadow centipede, the terrifying force almost crushed and deformed the latter, sending it flying dozens of meters back with a whoosh. The cold glint of the dagger spun in Chen Ling's palm. He parried a biting centipede with a backhand, its dense long legs clawing at Chen Ling's body. But he dodged them with a flash. He raised his gun, the muzzle locked onto the wriggling dark red hole on the black head, and pulled the trigger repeatedly. Bang, bang, bang. 3 bullets shot out, piercing the centipede's head. It twisted and curled on the spot for a moment, then became motionless. Chen Ling knew many people were watching him, so he couldn't use the court of judgment or the formless. Fortunately, killing Rhapsody wasn't as easily recognizable, even if he used it. These ordinary people might not understand it, so he relied solely on it and the blood clothes for intense close-quarters combat. Chen Ling looked back at the 3 chickens rushing towards him simultaneously, charging forward without any defense. Sharp claws, teeth, and beaks pierced his body, instantly leaving dense, bloody holes, locking him in place. The hearts of the Han Shuang Street residents watching skipped a beat. Chen Ling, impaled by the long legs of 3 shadow centipedes, sneered. Enduring his injuries, he plunged his dagger through the head of one centipede, then backhanded his gun barrel into the mouth of another centipede and pulled the trigger. 2 centipede corpses immediately fell to the ground. Just a few chickens, want to kill me? Chen Ling grabbed the chicken that had pierced him with his bare hands. One hand gripping its head, the other its leg. The terrifying power brought by the blood clothes lifted it into the air. And then he slowly tore and stretched it. The chicken writhed wildly, but with a roar from Chen Ling, it was still ripped in half by his hands. Foul-smelling blood and internal organs splattered onto the ground. Chen Ling, covered in blood, looked down at the half-remaining chicken leg in his hand, suddenly feeling an irresistible urge to take a bite. He swallowed, resisting the urge. He didn't like to eat raw. Chen Ling casually tossed the half-corpse aside and coldly looked at the remaining 3 chickens. His figure flickered, turning into a bloody shadow, and he charged out again. In the fog-shrouded street, the only sound was the tearing of flesh. All the residents peeking from behind their windows felt their stomachs churn violently, their faces indescribably grim. Boss Shu's wife finally couldn't hold it in, got up, rushed to the toilet, and immediately threw up. Chen Ling's combat was simply too bloody, especially the scene of him tearing the centipede apart with his bare hands. Everyone watched as that vicious centipede was ripped in half, its internal organs spilling onto the ground. The most crucial part was that Chen Ling then held the centipede's head in his arms, looking utterly engrossed. Open black lens bracket audience anticipation +7 close black lens bracket. Perhaps Chen Ling felt that using a dagger and gun wasn't effective enough, so he completely abandoned his weapons and began to slaughter barehanded. His blood-stained black trench coat flapped in the thick fog, and at the same time, the sharp shrieks of the shadow centipedes rang out one after another. Chapter 105, The Lair. A few minutes later, Officer Chen Ling pulled off the head of the last centipede, and it completely lost its life. Who? Officer Chen Ling slowly stood up from the pool of blood. In the dead silent dense fog, only he remained standing alone. Officer Chen Ling's gaze swept across his surroundings. The residents behind the nearby windows were greatly alarmed and immediately prostrated themselves on the ground. Fearing to make eye contact with this living Yama King, Officer Chen Ling had already solved all the troubles on this street. So he became the biggest trouble on this street. Officer Chen Ling walked forward along the street. Faint sobbing sounds came from the ruins of one of the buildings. Through the broken fragments of the shattered door, a woman was seen holding a child, kneeling before a corpse so badly bitten that its face was unrecognizable, crying profusely. Officer Chen Ling recognized this family. Years ago, during Chinese New Year, he had even brought Chen Yan to their house to get some candy and oranges. Seeing this scene, Officer Chen Ling actually didn't have much of a reaction. Perhaps it was due to his mind being affected by the soldier god path. His empathy was almost completely erased. Even though this family in front of him had once been friendly with him. At this moment, it was like watching a movie or a performance, with no ripple in his heart. Just now, did that monster come knocking? Officer Chen Ling asked. The woman froze for a moment, then nodded desperately. Did you respond? Responded. The woman's body trembled uncontrollably. She looked at the corpse in front of her. I originally wanted him not to make a sound. He insisted on asking who was knocking. And then the monster outside said it was looking for some king? And then? Then we realized something was wrong and stopped talking. But it still rushed in. And then, the woman's voice became more and more choked. Officer Chen Ling, we were also knocked on. But we didn't answer. Just then, Boss Shu from next door cautiously pushed open his door. I heard that disasters all have their own domains and ways of killing. That monster, wouldn't it kill based on knocking? Officer Chen Ling looked at Boss Shu in surprise. Although this person was timid, his mind worked quite fast. Currently, it's very likely. Officer Chen Ling nodded. Officer Chen Ling had heard of the existence of disaster domains before. But so far, he hadn't fully deduced the domain ability of this type of disaster. It was only suspected that it could control human bodies through shadows, and also kill by knocking. Officer Chen Ling didn't linger much and continued to move forward. There were a total of 8 families attacked by the disaster on Han Shuang Street, and almost every family was not spared. It was considered good for a family like the one just now, where only one person died. Among them, 2 households had been gnawed until no one was left, leaving only broken flesh on the ground. This was still under the circumstance that Zhao Yi had escaped back in advance to report to Officer Chen Ling. If it had been any later, the number of casualties would probably have doubled. Disaster invasion on Han Yu Street. 5 have appeared so far. 4 have invaded Han Feng Street. There are also several here on Han Shui Street. Damn it, they're rushing over. From the walkie-talkie, the terrified shouts of the enforcers came, followed by a series of static sounds. It's not just Han Shuang Street. Officer Chen Ling's expression was a little grim. This is Shi Renji. I've already cleared Han Feng Street and am now on my way to Han Shui Street. The sound of the walkie-talkie rang out again. This time it was finally good news. As a 2-pattern enforcement officer, Shi Renji's own combat power was not weak. How is Officer Chen Ling doing? Han Meng's voice rang out. Officer Chen Ling raised the walkie-talkie and replied calmly. Han Shuang Street has been cleared. You've already finished killing? Shi Renji's voice barely concealed his surprise. He had fought with these disasters and knew their strength. It was truly surprising that Officer Chen Ling, a newcomer who had just embarked on the soldier god path, could clear this street in such a short time. Officer Chen Ling gave a faint in response. By the way, where did you go? Officer Chen Ling seemed to remember something. I'm on my way to the steel factory. Ellipsis. In the dense fog, a black afterimage flashed rapidly across the sky above the 3rd district. The strong wind made the trench coat with 4 patterns flutter. Han Meng's calm eyes gazed at the approaching factory area in the distance. And he slowly spoke. This is a reproductive type of disaster. If the mother isn't destroyed, the offspring will be endless. You guys clear the streets first. I'll deal with the mother. Han Meng put away his walkie-talkie, his figure like a black meteor streaking across the night sky, landing steadily in front of the factory area. The wind stirred up by his coat hem blew up sand and stones from the ground. And a vacuum area was rolled out of the dense fog. Han Meng looked at the dark, squirming factory in front of him, his eyes narrowing into a dangerous arc. Troublesome. Han Meng's appearance seemed to disturb the shadows in the dense fog. The entirely dark factory surged violently. If one looked closely, they could see countless long centipedes crawling on its surface, like a tide rolling towards Han Meng outside the Iron Gate. This factory area had, at some unknown time, been occupied and turned into a disaster's lair, and at this moment, a dangerous intruder had appeared in this lair. To breed such a terrifying number of offspring in one day means the mother's own rank is at least 5th rank. Han Meng held the gun in one hand, and with the other, he took out a rolled cigarette from his pocket, put it in the corner of his mouth, and lit it with a lighter. He took a deep puff, and the orange flame burned a corner in the dense fog. At the same time, an invisible domain unfolded beneath his feet. He raised his gun, aimed at the swarming tide of shadows, and murmured to himself, "Judgment begins." Bang! An invisible bullet exited the gun barrel, instantly tearing open a several-meter-wide vacuum area in the black tide. All the shadow centipedes in that path were simultaneously deconstructed to a molecular level, completely dissipating into nothingness. Dense shadow centipedes rushed out of the Iron Gate, first expanding in all directions, then contracting towards the center, completely surrounding Han Meng. Roughly estimated, there were hundreds of them. Han Meng pulled the trigger repeatedly, and the power of judgment tore open gap after gap in the tide. But under the encirclement from all directions, Han Meng's activity area still rapidly shrunk. Relying solely on this single-caliber lethality made it difficult to protect himself against a massive number of enemies. If viewed from the sky, Han Meng was like an isolated island about to be submerged by shadows. As the water level gradually rose, he seemed to be on the verge of being swept away. Han Meng frowned slightly. Just as he was about to be submerged, he suddenly raised his hand. An iron rod, broken by the shadow centipedes, vibrated and automatically flew into his palm. Han Meng held the gun in one hand and the iron rod in the other, spinning it rapidly several times in his palm, then suddenly plunged it into the ground. Dong! Visible ripples swept in all directions, and the earth cracked inch by inch. The power of deconstruction intermingled with these ripples, sweeping across. Dozens of shadow centipedes closest to Han Meng instantly exploded, and the area covered by the domain once again turned into a vacuum, as if an invisible giant hand had forcibly erased all matter here. The terrifying destructive power of the open black lens bracket judgment close black lens bracket path was displayed to its fullest at this moment. Han Meng's gaze locked onto the factory. He forcefully pulled the iron rod out of the earth and threw it like a javelin. A black lightning bolt instantly streaked across the sky. Boom! A 10-meter wide hole was smashed directly into the tall steel factory. The thick wall seemed to evaporate into thin air. Through the hole, a giant centipede could be seen coiling inside, with only a dark red mouth slowly turning in that direction. Han Meng stood on the shattered earth, his gaze piercing through the surging black tide, locking onto the colossal creature inside the factory. Found you. Chapter 106, Fearful Riot. Dad. Zhao Yi pushed open the breakfast shop's door and anxiously called out. A figure rushed out from inside the house. Seeing Zhao Yi at the doorway, he finally let out a sigh of relief. "You brat, where did you run off to?" Uncle Zhao gritted his teeth, grabbed his ear, and spoke fiercely. "I was just about to tell you not to go out for the next couple of days. And the moment I opened my eyes, you were gone without a trace. If you had come back any later, I would have had to ask Chen Ling to find you." Lighter, lighter, lighter. "Dad, I think I've rendered meritorious service." Quote. Question mark quote. Zhao Yi saw Uncle Zhao's puzzled gaze and quickly recounted his recent experience. After listening, the latter silently released his ear and began to pace around the house, as if searching for something. "Dad, what are you doing?" Uncle Zhao picked up a broom and fiercely swung it at Zhao Yi's backside, creating whistling sounds. Amidst Zhao Yi's screams, Uncle Zhao's curses rang out one after another. "I should have broken your legs earlier. Running into the lair of the calamity counts as rendering meritorious service? I wonder how many heads you have to lose. I told you not to run around. I told you not to run around." Uncle Zhao was truly enraged this time, striking harder with each swing. just as Zhao Yi was scrambling around the room. He seemed to hear something and grabbed the broom handle tightly with a reverse grip. Uncle Zhao's eyes widened, about to say something, when Zhao Yi solemnly made a shush gesture. His gaze fixed on the outside. In the silent, dense fog, figures carrying kerosene lamps rushed past one after another. Calamity. The calamity is here. Help, help, can anyone save me? I don't want to die. Quote. Perhaps because this breakfast shop was still lit, a figure suddenly stopped and frantically pounded on the shop door. Open the door for me. It was a man's voice, anxious with a hint of intimidation. I'm telling you to open the door quickly. Can't you hear? Uncle Zhao and Zhao Yi exchanged a wary glance. Just then, the man said another sentence. I am an enforcer. Open the door quickly. Hearing this, Uncle Zhao's expression changed somewhat. After a moment of hesitation, he still went forward and unlocked the shop door. Whoosh! The shop door was pulled open, and a figure in a black-red uniform rushed in from outside. He was so fast that he directly knocked over Uncle Zhao, who was behind the door, sending him crashing to the ground. Dad! Zhao Yi rushed forward, shielding the groaning Uncle Zhao on the ground, and angrily looked at the man. Who are you? I am Enforcer Guo Nan. Shut up if you don't want to die. The man instantly drew a knife from his waist, pointed it at Zhao Yi, and spoke fiercely. If Chen Ling were here, he would immediately recognize this person as the enforcer known as Guo Zhe, whom he had stabbed multiple times in the market. He was also the person in charge of Han Shui Street, next to Han Shuang Street. At this moment, Guo Nan's face was covered in blood and dust, looking utterly disheveled. Guo Nan's hand, gripping the knife, was even trembling. Everything he had just experienced was too terrifying. He had personally witnessed a shadow centipede smash open the door of a house on Han Shui Street and tear everyone inside to shreds. He was truly scared. He had been an enforcer for so many years. Yet this was the first time he had truly seen a calamity. That bloody scene and the centipede's waving myriad legs directly shattered the courage in his heart. He did not choose to fight head-on, but instead turned and ran. Those few shadow centipedes continuously massacred homes, and the surrounding residents were all terrified to the point of collapse. They heard the sounds of fighting and wailing getting closer and closer to them. And some also chose to flee. As soon as the first person started to run, others, seeing this, were also driven by fear to run together. Just like that, Han Shui Street completely descended into chaos. During the escape in the dense fog, Guo Nan only knew that many figures were chasing him in the mist. He dared not stop, and he ran wildly forward without looking back until he saw this place. Han Shuang Street was still quiet, as if it had never been invaded by the calamity. Guo Nan's chest heaved violently. While holding the knife to intimidate Zhao Yi, he looked back through the window to observe the outside, his eyes filled with vigilance and lingering fear. If he hid here, he should be able to avoid those things? Guo Nan thought to himself. But unfortunately, he chose the wrong address and the wrong person to threaten. You dared to hurt my dad? Zhao Yi's eyes were bloodshot. He snatched up the broom on the ground and rushed towards the knife without hesitation. Guo Nan had not expected an ordinary person to dare to attack him. Who was holding a knife? Caught off guard, he only managed to stab Zhao Yi once before being struck by the whistling broom on his temple. Seeing stars. The next moment, Zhao Yi embraced him and directly crashed through the door, rolling onto Han Shuang Street. Help! Help! They're coming! More and more residents of Han Shui Street screamed as they rushed into Han Shuang Street. Countless feet trampling over the two of them, Guo Nan grunted in pain a few times and struggled to get up. At the same time, Zhao Yi, opposite him, also got up, covered in blood, his eyes fixed on him. Screams, wails, and the sounds of biting and crawling from deep within the dense fog completely shattered the tranquility of Han Shuang Street, and everything was swept into chaos and disorder. This was a riot for survival, and the same scene was already unfolding in most of the 3rd District streets. Bang! Just then, a gunshot rang out from in front of the crowd. From within the dense fog, a figure in a black trench coat walked out with a grim expression. He held a gun, and his eyes, as he looked at the completely panicked crowd, were filled with solemnity. Everyone stand still. If anyone moves, I will kill them. Chen Ling pointed the gun at the crowd and spoke in an unquestionable tone. Everyone subconsciously stopped, Seeing Chen Ling in his enforcement officer attire, hope finally appeared on their terrified faces. It's an enforcement officer. Save us. The monsters are about to catch up. Consecutive voices rang out from the crowd. Some wanted to hide behind Chen Ling, but another gunshot scared them back to their original spots. I said, if anyone moves, I will kill them. Chen Ling's cold voice rang out again. Sha-sha, sha-sha-sha. Shi Renji's voice came through the walkie-talkie. Chen Ling, how's the situation there? Chen Ling's gaze fell to the ground. Where among the intertwined shadows of the many residents of Han Shui Street? Several eerie, large centipede silhouettes had already blended in. Chen Ling was silent for a long time before speaking hoarsely. Not so good. Chapter 107, Executed by Firing Squad. Chen Ling's worst fears had come true. Although this calamity looked terrifying, if one just hid behind a door and stayed silent, there was a high probability of survival. The real fear was everyone being scared into rushing out of their houses. Just like Zhao Yi earlier, and unknowingly becoming possessed by the calamity in their shadows. This way, the more people there were, the harder it would be to control. Once these calamities hidden in the shadows attacked simultaneously, it would be a bloody massacre. Next, whoever I point to, walk behind me. Chen Ling raised his hand and pointed to the people at the very front of the crowd. They breathed a slight sigh of relief and hurried behind Chen Ling. As if only his black trench coat could make them feel safe. More and more people walked behind Chen Ling, as screams and scuttling sounds continuously came from the thick fog behind them. Some of those standing still couldn't hold back. Chen Ling, as an enforcement officer, why aren't you dealing with those calamities? What are you wasting time with us here for? Wo Nan asked through gritted teeth. Perhaps because there were so many people, Chen Ling hadn't noticed him before he spoke. Now, he looked over in the direction of the voice, his eyes narrowing slightly. As an enforcer, why aren't you maintaining order and protecting residents? Why are you running with them instead? Wo Nan was speechless. Not only did he run, he also knocked over my father. Zhao Yi covered his stomach with one hand, fresh blood seeping through his fingers. It was a knife wound Guo Hai had inflicted during their earlier struggle. Seeing Zhao Yi's condition and the blood-stained short knife in Wo Nan's hand, Chen Ling's gaze grew colder. He expressionlessly pointed to a few more residents to hide behind him. Now, only 5 people remained in front, and Wo Nan was among them. Chen Ling swapped out his magazine, and to everyone's astonishment, suddenly raised his gun and pulled the trigger at the shadows of the few people. Bang bang bang. The piercing gunshots made the residents cover their ears and shriek. 4 massive black centipede shadows suddenly shot out, charging towards Chen Ling, who had fired. This scene directly stunned the surrounding residents. Before they could react, Chen Ling accurately stabbed the nearest centipede's head with a knife, and with a forceful slash, split it open from the center. The pungent smell of blood filled everyone's nostrils, and one centipede collapsed to the ground. At the same time, the other 3 swarmed forward, fighting with the blood-soaked figure in black. Chen Ling was so severely injured just now, can he still fight? The Han Shui Street residents watching couldn't help but worry about his condition. Yeah, I saw his body was almost torn apart, he's covered in blood. He's already killed almost 10 of them in a row. I feel like he's reached his limit. Is that so? But why do I feel like he's getting more and more excited? Chen Ling gripped his dagger, attacking without defending, letting the attacks of the 3 chicken land on him. He furiously retaliated with greater strength and faster speed, killing the 3 chicken on the spot within half a minute, even more smoothly than before. Witnessing the battle at such close range, the Han Shui Street residents turned pale with fright. Even Wo Nan's legs trembled. He looked at Chen Ling, who was full of holes and seemed on the verge of dying on the spot. With unprecedented fear in his eyes, he saw Chen Ling finish off the shadow centipedes and slowly walk towards him. As if he thought of something, he nervously spoke. Do I also have a monster in my shadow? The shadows of the Han Shui Street residents Chen Ling had pointed to earlier and who had hidden behind him hadn't shown any calamities. Only these 6 people were still standing in front of Chen Ling, and the other 5 had something in their shadows. Wo Nan suddenly felt a chill down his neck. No. Chen Ling calmly shook his head. You're standing here simply because you deserve to die. In Wo Nan's stunned and bewildered gaze, Chen Ling raised his gun and pressed it against Wo Nan's forehead. Before the latter could react, he pulled the trigger. Bang! The bullet pierced Guo Nan's head. He stared with disbelieving eyes and fell straight backward. The surroundings fell into a dead silence. Neither the Han Shuang Street nor the Han Shui Street residents had expected Chen Ling to actually kill an enforcer in broad daylight. At this moment, some were shocked, some were confused, but not a single person felt that Guo Nan's death was a pity. Instead, they all felt a strange sense of satisfaction. Enforcer Guo Nan, oppressing commoners, extorting money, abandoning his duties, intentionally injuring others. Chen Ling didn't even glance at Guo Nan's corpse as he holstered his gun. Executed by firing squad. Chen Ling turned and walked into the thick fog. As an enforcement officer, Chen Ling possessed the authority to govern all enforcers and had absolute enforcement power. As long as there was a reason, killing Guo Nan on the spot would have no impact. Guo Hai had indeed offended him before, and Chen Ling hadn't thought of how to retaliate. But what Guo Nan did today made Chen Ling decide to kill him. The survivors of the two streets watched Chen Ling's gradually departing back, lost in thought. In their minds, they were still replaying the scene of Chen Ling singling out the hidden shadows, solo killing 4 calamities, and then shooting Guo Nan in the head. A moment later, someone suddenly whispered, "Why'd I suddenly feel, he doesn't seem so scary anymore." ... Several streets are completely out of control now. Shi Renji's voice on the walkie-talkie was full of exhaustion. Residents are running in a panic, allowing the calamities to mix among them. I just saw Han Feng Street almost completely wiped out, corpses everywhere. You don't sound too good. I can still hold on. It's just that I've cleared 3 or 4 streets consecutively, constantly fighting. A bit tired, Shi Renji chuckled bitterly. I finally understand how the casualty numbers in 5 districts and District 6 came about. At this rate, our 3rd district won't be much better. Chen Ling walked to the top of a small building and looked around. Not much could be seen in the pitch-black thick fog. Only a few flickering flames vaguely visible on distant streets, and the continuous shouts and screams. No news from Han Meng yet? No, I can't reach him. Chen Ling shook his head helplessly. With Han Meng gone, only he and Shi Renji were left as enforcement officers in the entire 3rd district. It was too difficult to clear all the streets. The casualties in 5 districts and District 6 were based on them having enough enforcement officers. Now, the situation in 3rd district was far more severe than theirs. I'm going north next. Chen Ling looked at the most chaotic direction of the flames. If I can find the weakness of these calamities, maybe things will be simpler. Chen Ling, you're still a tier 1. If you're tired, don't push yourself too hard. Shi Renji reminded him. I heard from Mom Jie that your talent is excellent, and you have a chance to enter Aurora City. It would be a huge loss to die here. Chen Ling's eyebrows raised slightly, and he hummed in acknowledgement. Although he hadn't had much contact with Shi Renji, for now, the other person seemed to be a good guy. Come to think of it, anyone Han Meng valued probably wouldn't have any ill intentions. Of course, except for himself. Chapter 108 Fragrance. Chen Ling's gaze swept around, avoiding the streets Shi Renji had already cleared, and walked directly towards the most chaotic area. So far, Han Shuang Street and Han Shui Street had been thoroughly cleared by Chen Ling. Before leaving, Chen Ling also told the residents to lock their doors and windows, not to make any sound no matter what happened, and even more so not to open their doors casually. After all, according to the killing logic of those calamities, this was the safest thing to do. At this point, Chen Ling's deterrent power came into play. Not a single person in the 2 streets dared to question his orders. They all nodded like chickens pecking rice and then closed themselves inside their homes. Chen Ling even felt that even if a major earthquake were to strike now and collapse their houses, not a single one of these people would run outside. Along the way, groups of panicked residents occasionally ran wildly in the streets without any particular destination. If Chen Ling encountered anyone controlled by a shadow centipede, he would kill them on the spot. If they were not controlled, Chen Ling would quickly shove them into unoccupied houses, telling them not to run around. Chen Ling walked through one street after another, the ground covered in shattered corpses. The closer he got to the edges, the more corpses there were. Most of them had been killed after their doors were forcibly broken down, or they had been completely slaughtered by calamities hidden in the shadows while escaping in groups. Compared to these streets, The losses on Han Shuang Street could almost be considered a no damage clear. Phew. In the ruined street, Chen Ling pulled his dagger out of a chicken's body and let out a long breath. More than 2 hours had passed since the Calamity invasion began. Chen Ling didn't remember how many chickens he had killed. His hand, holding the knife, felt a bit weak, and several pistol magazines had been emptied. Even the few wounds he had inflicted on himself earlier had almost healed. Even the blood clothes were a bit overwhelmed by such intense combat. And a deep sense of fatigue welled up in his heart. Just as Chen Ling numbly gripped his knife and walked towards the next street. His nose twitched slightly, and he suddenly stopped. So fragrant, Chen Ling murmured to himself. A long-lost spark appeared in his dim eyes. He turned to look around, found the direction from which the enticing aroma came, and subconsciously took a step towards it. In this district, where the smell of blood was everywhere, this scent was like a bonfire in a world of extreme cold, so striking. So warm, making one subconsciously want to approach. Chen Ling quickened his pace, walking through half a street, and finally stopped in front of a shattered house. This was a winery. The main door had been smashed open, and the entrance was covered in blood and mutilated limbs. A blazing fire burned from deep within the house, as if something had been set alight. Chen Ling frowned slightly, tightened his grip on the dagger, and stepped inside. The shop's interior was completely in disarray. The burly shopkeeper, holding a black stick with a flame burning at its tip, was shouting and frantically smashing a chicken that was pinned under the debris of a wall. As the fiery stick struck, half of the chicken's body caught fire, and the strong aroma emanated from it. Die, die, die. Damn it, I'm not to be trifled with. You want to eat me? I'll burn your mouth for you. The shopkeeper picked up a wine jar nearby, took a big swig, then sprayed it onto the tip of the black stick. The burning flames suddenly expanded several times over, and with a courageous roar from the shopkeeper, it was shoved directly into the chicken's mouth. Swallowing the flames, the chicken's body struggled violently, and a sharp shriek echoed through the shop, making the shopkeeper's eardrums ache. Boom! In extreme pain, the chicken forcefully broke free from the wall debris pinning it down. Its half-burning body stumbled, knocking over a large amount of furniture, and charged rapidly towards the shopkeeper. The shopkeeper hadn't expected the thing to still be able to move. And his face immediately changed dramatically. He tried to pull out the burning stick but had no chance. His body felt as if it had been struck by a scorching train, slamming heavily against the wall behind him. Just then, a black figure rushed to his front with a whoosh. A heavy whip kick landed on the lower side of the heavy chicken, directly sending it flying. The shopkeeper only felt a gust of wind brush past his face, and the centipede was kicked into the corner. While enduring the sharp pain in his chest, he looked up at the figure in front of him, seeing a young man in a black trench coat standing there calmly, looking at the burning shadow centipede. Deep in thought, Chen Ling glanced at him. Can you still move? Yes, I can. Find a place to hide. After saying this, Chen Ling no longer looked at him but walked directly towards the chicken. In the corner of the room, the mostly charred chicken was writhing frantically, no longer possessing its original ferocity and strangeness. Chen Ling casually pulled the stick out of its mouth, and the chicken's painful shriek rang out again. Chen Ling stared at it intently, motionless like a statue. The centipede's sounds disturbed the shopkeeper, who subconsciously covered his ears. Just as he was about to say something, he saw the figure in the black trench coat, and his Adam's apple bobbed. Don't you think it smells good? Chen Ling suddenly asked. The shopkeeper was stunned. He stared blankly at the writhing, charred centipede, perhaps due to the scorching flames. The air was filled with a sour, burnt plastic smell. What did you say? He thought he had misheard. Nothing. Chen Ling waved his hand. You can go. Don't you need my help? Although I'm not an enforcer, I'm actually very strong. The shopkeeper finally blurted out his true feelings. He was indeed very strong and intelligent. Becoming an enforcer was his youthful dream. Unfortunately, his family's financial resources were insufficient to support him in becoming an enforcer. And this enforcement officer in front of him might be his only shortcut to becoming an enforcer. Chen Ling currently had no time to talk to him and spoke again in a low voice. Go. Seeing Chen Ling's cold attitude, a hint of dejection flashed in the shopkeeper's eyes. He lowered his head and finally walked out of the shop. Once only Chen Ling was left in the room. He finally let out a sigh of relief. He looked at the fragrant roasted chicken in front of him and couldn't help but swallow another mouthful of saliva. From a distance before, Chen Ling hadn't felt much. But now standing in front of this fire-roasted chicken, some physiological reactions were uncontrollable. The aroma of wine and chicken perfectly blended under the scorching flames, emitting a charming, intoxicating fragrance, sweet but not cloying, very much like the Wadiao chicken Chen Ling used to eat often. At this moment, Chen Ling was already exhausted and famished. As soon as he smelled the aroma of this wine-roasted chicken, his saliva couldn't stop flowing. His rationality told him that this was a calamity and he absolutely couldn't eat it. Who knew what was inside its body? Bacteria? Parasites? Or something else? But even so, he couldn't help but take a step, slowly approaching the roasted chicken. Chapter 109 Eating Secretly. Chapter 109 Secret Eating. Just one bite, surely nothing bad will happen? The moment this thought popped into Chen Ling's mind, it became impossible to suppress. He glanced outside the shop, confirming that no one was there, and then, as if possessed, tore a piece from the roasted chicken. After all, this was a calamity, and if other residents saw him eating this, it would likely lead to unnecessary misunderstandings. The aroma of roasted meat, mixed with the scent of alcohol, wafted into Chen Ling's nostrils, making his mind almost blank. He instinctively put it into his mouth and began to chew. Open black lens bracket audience expectation +1 close black lens bracket. Delicious. Too delicious. This was a texture Chen Ling had never tasted before. Tender yet elastic. Just one bite sent a wave of satisfaction from his mouth to the top of his head, making him feel as if he was about to ascend, all his fatigue vanishing. Chen Ling's eyes gradually glowed with a strange red light. He seemed to have completely forgotten the idea of just one bite. Frantically tearing at the roasted chicken with both hands, stuffing piece after piece of succulent chicken into his mouth. He didn't understand why the shopkeeper earlier had shown no reaction when faced with something so fragrant. Open black lens bracket audience expectation +1 close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket audience expectation +1 close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket audience expectation, close black lens bracket. Chen Ling seemed to have completely fallen into a strange state. Pairs of scarlet eyes opened from the void behind him. The audience squinted, watching this scene with amusement and playfulness in their eyes. At the same time, the shadow centipede, which was not yet completely dead, let out a mournful roar that echoed through the street. It could clearly feel its body being torn apart bit by bit, writhing and twisting in pain. Just then, Chen Ling seemed to find its noise too annoying, so he casually picked up a jar of fermented wine from the table and smashed it onto its body with a bang. The rich aroma of wine spread all over the centipede. The next moment, Chen Ling thrust the burning stick in his hand into its body. Whoosh! Blazing flames instantly ignited, completely engulfing the shadow centipede. Its vitality rapidly faded in the flames, its body curling into a ball. At this moment, it seemed to sense something. The charred black holes in its head looked at the pairs of scarlet eyes behind Chen Ling. A harsh, grating sound rang out again. It painfully and fearfully uttered a single character. King. ... The roar of the calamity gradually faded, and blazing flames spread from the wine shop. The shopkeeper, who had been running, stopped and looked back at the shop not far away. His eyes were filled with conflict. Such a big fire had started in the wine shop, and he wondered if the enforcement officer was all right. Why hadn't he come out after so long? Could he have fainted? Was that monster completely dead? A jumble of thoughts flooded his mind. He stood there for a long time, then gritted his teeth and walked back. Those thoughts were merely excuses he made for going back. He had finally gotten a chance to show himself in front of an enforcement officer, and if he just left, he probably wouldn't have another opportunity to become an enforcer in this lifetime. If Chen Ling really was in trouble and he saved Chen Ling, his future would naturally be smooth sailing. If Chen Ling was fine, then at most he would just get scolded. While comforting himself, the shopkeeper walked to the entrance of the flickering shop, about to call out something. The next moment, he froze. In the deepest part of the burning flames, a centipede, writhing in pain from the scorching fire, slowly curled up. In front of it, a dark figure squatted, frantically tearing off its flesh and slender legs. stuffing them into his mouth, his cheeks bulging. Eerie green blood dripped from the corner of his mouth onto the ground. His hands, tearing at the flesh, were scorched by the flames. Yet he seemed completely oblivious to the pain, like a greedy secret eater. This bizarre scene fell into the shopkeeper's eyes. His pupils contracted in disbelief. He fearfully took half a step back, making a rustling sound. The figure of the predatory centipede suddenly stopped. In the flickering firelight, he slowly turned to look at the shopkeeper. Half a centipede leg dangling from the corner of his mouth, his pupils emitting a strange red glow. He tilted his head and thought for a moment, then broke off the enormous centipede head and offered it to the shopkeeper. His bulging cheeks mumbled indistinctly, "Want a bite?" The shopkeeper's eyes rolled back, and he fainted on the spot, scared senseless. Seeing that the shopkeeper wouldn't eat, Chen Ling no longer shared with him, devouring the chicken legs of the chicken in a few bites, making crunching sounds. After an unknown amount of time, the chicken in front of him had completely disappeared, leaving only some oil stains on the ground. Chen Ling let out a satisfied burp. He swayed as he stood up, the red light in his eyes gradually receding, and rationality surged back into his mind like a tide. He looked at the empty corner in front of him, standing there in a daze. "It's all gone?" Chen Ling frowned tightly, holding his head in his hands, his eyes filled with deep confusion. What had just happened? Chen Ling's mind was blank. His consciousness was still at the moment he took the first bite of chicken. And then when he came to, the entire chicken was gone. Keep in mind, that chicken was 2 meters long. Chen Ling looked down at his stomach. There was no sign of bulging, no feeling of fullness, only an endlessly lingering fragrance in his mouth. But the fatigue Chen Ling had accumulated from fighting his way through was also swept away, and whether it was an illusion or not, he felt his mental power seemed to have increased by a few threads. Chen Ling glanced at the oil-stained corner, feeling a bit guilty. He was about to turn and leave, but after a moment of hesitation, he turned back. He put away his knife and gun, and instead took a jar of wine and the burning stick, walking out of the shop contentedly. Why is he here? As soon as he reached the doorway, Chen Ling saw the shopkeeper lying unconscious on the ground. He called out twice, but the other party showed no sign of waking up. Chen Ling looked around and could only temporarily put down the wine jar, throw the shopkeeper into a nearby room, and lock the door. As soon as he stepped out of the room, he heard a rustling sound from the walkie-talkie. "This is Shi Renji. I've finished clearing Han Chuan Street as well. The entire western side should be mostly dealt with now." Shi Renji's hoarse voice came through the walkie-talkie, as if his throat was almost parched, his words revealing deep weakness. "But my body also seems to be reaching its limit. Chen Ling, are you all right?" Chen Ling picked up the walkie-talkie and replied energetically, "I'm fine, very fine." Chapter 110. Moth to a Flame. Quote. The other end of the walkie-talkie fell silent. "Chen Ling, I think you shouldn't overexert yourself," Shi Renji said earnestly. Although the open black lens bracket Asura close black lens bracket path provides extremely strong physical recovery, stamina cannot be recovered. If you're tired, just rest for a while. No one will blame you. Just as Chen Ling was about to speak, a chicken shrieked and charged at him from within the thick fog, moving at an incredibly fast speed. Chen Ling's eyes lit up. He took a swig of wine, then, like a conjurer, sprayed a mouthful of fire from the fire stick. A ball of flame collided head-on with the chicken, and a sharp shriek suddenly erupted. What was that sound? Shi Renji was startled. Chen Ling didn't answer. He placed the wine jar on the ground, drew a dagger from his waist, and swiftly charged towards the burning chicken. After his stamina recovered, Chen Ling's speed returned to its peak, with the fire stick and dagger continuously swinging. Fragrant slices of meat were constantly cut off. Chen Ling bit down on a slice of meat skewered on the dagger, pulled it off with a tug, and chomped on it while continuing his attack. His black trench coat fluttered in the fog. Chen Ling was like an executioner, yet also like a gourmet. His frenzied assault forced the chicken to retreat repeatedly, and before long, it was completely engulfed by the flames. Chen Ling, Chen Ling? Shi Renji called his name through the walkie-talkie. Are you all right? Chen Ling suppressed the urge to devour the entire roasted chicken on the spot. He went back to pick up the walkie-talkie, chewing as he replied, "I'm fine, it's been taken care of." "Are you eating something?" Chen Ling immediately swallowed the chicken. No. Although Shi Renji was somewhat puzzled, he sighed and continued. The calamities are now mixed in with the crowd and constantly moving, making them difficult to hunt down. I can hold on for a while longer. I'm heading east now. You should find a place too. Before Shi Renji could finish, another chicken burst through the thick fog, shrieking as it charged towards Chen Ling. Chen Ling froze. The chickens Chen Ling had encountered before would either knock on doors to kill people or ambush from the shadows. Instances like this, where they charged at him like mad, were almost non-existent. If it were just one, that would be one thing. But with two such occurrences in just a few minutes, Chen Ling keenly sensed something unusual. In a flash, Chen Ling didn't have time to think. He drew his blade and engaged in close-quarters combat with the opponent. Half a minute later, Chen Ling put away his dagger, his mouth glistening with oil. He looked at the two mutilated roasted chickens on the ground and fell into thought. Roasted chickens. No, there must be a reason why the chicken's behavior logic deviated from before. Chen Ling carefully searched all over his body, and his gaze finally fixed on two things. One was the wine jar on the ground, and the other was the torch in his hand. After a moment of thought, Chen Ling ruled out the wine jar, because when the second chicken charged over, the wine jar was several meters behind him, and the opponent's target was clearly himself. Then the only possibility was the burning torch in his hand. These chickens were hostile to fire? Why? To verify his idea, Chen Ling entered several houses, found some combustible wood, piled it together, and lit it. A bonfire appeared in the center of the foggy street, burning silently. Chen Ling himself stood by the bonfire, holding the fire stick in one hand and the dagger in the other, his gaze vigilantly sweeping the surroundings. 10 seconds, 20 seconds, 30 seconds. After a brief silence, 3 successive shrieks came from the end of the street. 3 shadow centipedes rushed through the thick fog at an astonishing speed, heading straight towards him. Seeing this, Chen Ling's eyes lit up. He knew he had guessed correctly. Chen Ling stomped out the bonfire without hesitation, then charged like lightning towards the 3 chickens. Fire could attract these chickens, and if it kept burning for too long, there was no telling how many would come at once. With Chen Ling's current combat strength, dealing with 8 or 9 was already the limit. If there were more, he might become the chicken's dinner. Chen Ling lit this bonfire only to conduct an experiment. Since the effect of fire had been proven, multiple plans had already appeared in his mind simultaneously. This time, Chen Ling did not use fire to burn them, but rather used his dagger to cleanly kill the 3 chickens, then turned and walked back in the direction he had come from. Ellipsis. In the dim shack, the shopkeeper groggily opened his eyes. He stared blankly at the unfamiliar ceiling for a while, and in a daze, he seemed to see that figure chewing a centipede again, holding a head, asking him if he wanted a bite. He gasped, suddenly sat up, and a dense layer of sweat beaded on his forehead. Was it a nightmare? The shopkeeper, still shaken, patted his chest, trying to forget the horrifying scene. Just then, the door was forcefully opened from outside. Thick fog surged in from outside the door. The figure that had just appeared in his nightmare stood calmly at the doorway, holding a fire stick in one hand and a jar of wine in the other. Looking at him, the moment he saw that demonic face, the shopkeeper's heart skipped a beat, and his face turned pale. I ask you, Chen Ling shook the wine in his hand. Do you have any more of this wine? The shopkeeper, still shaken, nodded. Yes, I have a warehouse north of the district. All the wine I brew is stored there. Give me the exact address. Chen Ling got the address and keys from the shopkeeper, then turned and left, leaving the shopkeeper bewildered and unsure of what had happened. A few minutes later, Chen Ling walked into an empty vegetable market. Brother Renji, I'm a bit tired. He pressed the switch on the walkie-talkie and said so. As he spoke, he held a plastic bag and began to put green onions, ginger, and garlic into it. Soon, Shi Renji's voice came from the walkie-talkie. It's normal to be tired. Find a place to rest for a while, and talk after you've recovered your stamina. Shi Renji's voice was also very tired, but when he heard Chen Ling say he was tired, there was a strange sense of relief in his tone. He wasn't afraid of Chen Ling being tired, he was afraid of Chen Ling pushing himself too hard and then collapsing on the battlefield. Chen Ling suddenly stopped, casually picked up a bottle of cooking wine from a nearby shelf, checked the production date, And put it in the bag as well. All right, Chen Ling said this word. Then put away the walkie-talkie. Chen Ling wandered around the vegetable market, picked a sturdier stick, wrapped its head with rags and towels, soaked it in gasoline for a long time, and then lit it. Blazing flames ignited from the top of the stick, like a moving sun in the thick fog. Chen Ling held the torch in one hand and seasoning in the other. Walking towards an unmanned alley corner, he gently tore at his cheek with his fingertips. By the time he walked out again, he had transformed into a stern-faced young man, and his black trench coat had changed back into that red opera robe, appearing exceptionally striking and eerie in the thick fog. Chen Ling licked his lips, and as his Adam's apple bobbed, his figure turned into an afterimage, quickly disappearing into the mist.